Go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy to get 20% off your first month of cognitive behavioural therapy, with weekly sessions online with a therapist, in addition to worksheets, a journal, meditation and yoga videos, and unlimited messaging. There's strong evidence that CBT can help people who hoard, and accessing therapy online can be affordable and accessible. Find out more and get your discount at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy.
Flexibility is great. That's why there's yoga. Flexibility for your insurance coverage is great too. That's why there's United Healthcare Insurance Plans. Underwritten by Golden Rule Insurance Company, United Healthcare Insurance Plans offer flexible, budget-friendly coverage for medical, vision, dental, and more. One of these plans may be right for you if you're, say, between jobs, coming off your parents' plan, turning a side hustle into a full hustle, or even missed open enrollment. Want more flexibility? Find out more about United Healthcare Insurance Plans at uh1.com.
Since 2013, Bombas has donated over 100 million socks, underwear, and T-shirts to those facing homelessness. If we counted those on air, this ad would last over 1,157 days. But if we counted the time it takes to make a donation possible, it would take just a few clicks. Because every time you make a purchase, Bombas donates an item to someone who needs it.
Go to bombas.com/ACAST and use code ACAST for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/ACAST, code ACAST.
I'm Sandra, and I'm just the professional your small business was looking for. But you didn't hire me because you didn't use LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn has professionals you can't find anywhere else, including those who aren't actively looking for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role, like me.
In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you'll miss out on great candidates like Sandra. Start hiring professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/spoken today.
Welcome to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder podcast. I am drowning in stuff and trying to find a way out. Listen as I explore the issues and delve deep as somebody profoundly affected by hoarding disorder. Find out more, including links to subscribe to the podcast, at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk, and find the links there to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and all over the place. So I'm going to start by reading a review that came to my Facebook page. So thank you to Carly Bell for this review. She said, "Thank you for being so open and helping to bring understanding of hoarding. Love your podcast and excited to hear all your progress. Keep going, you are making a difference." Thank you, Carly. That is so nice. So nice of you to say. I really appreciate it. Thank you. So I'm going to start today with my occasional series where I share a success of the week and a weird dilemma of the week. Now, the success of the week is all about giving myself encouragement. It's all about marking my progress, and it's also a way to encourage listeners who are feeling a bit stuck that success not only is possible, but that it can come from the strangest of places. It's not necessarily what you might expect. So my success is that this is episode 45 of this podcast. That's a lot of episodes, guys. That's a lot of episodes. And I feel like I need to mark and celebrate that this is still going. I'm still doing it. I'm still finding it useful. You're telling me that you find it useful. And it's a lot of work, sure. But you help me with that by being there and by being so supportive. So yay to me for getting 45 episodes out. Hopefully another 45 to come. And yay for you for being like my little cheerleaders out there. And I don't find it easy to congratulate myself. And I already am kind of cringing that I'm celebrating this so openly. But it is a big deal. It's a lot of work, and it's culminated in you lot being brilliant, and I love it, and thank you. So my weird dilemma of the week was an instruction leaflet. Now, there are times when it is really, really sensible to keep instruction leaflets. If you've just bought a new cooker and it does things that your previous cooker didn't do, you want the instruction leaflet so that you can work out how to turn on the weird hob or whatever. If you've got a new microwave that also sings and dances and orders your shopping for you, you want to keep the instruction leaflet for that. But there are things we don't need instruction leaflets for to get us through life. There are things that it's a mystery why they come with instruction leaflets. But they do, and then I have trouble getting rid of them because I feel like, what if it's important? What if I need it? And so my weird dilemma this week was I got given a water bottle, a really nice water bottle, very pretty, I like it a lot. And I was going to wash it before I first used it and saw there was something inside, and it was an instruction leaflet. And this water bottle, it was a water bottle. It didn't plug in, it didn't light up, it didn't do anything that instructions would be needed for. You just unscrewed the top, filled it with water, and screwed the top back on again. And yet somehow it came with instructions. And so because it came with instructions, I spent more time than I'd like to admit wondering if I should keep the instructions. In case of what? I don't know. Water bottle failure? If I suddenly forget how to screw lids on? I do not know. I did throw the water bottle instruction leaflet away, you'll be glad to know. But goodness me, that was the kind of dilemma that I'm sure if you're not a hoarder, makes no sense to you whatsoever. So this week, something happened that also happened a year ago. And it's been quite interesting to look at how I dealt with it 12 months ago versus how I dealt with it this year. And so I wanted to talk about that this week. This time last year, I was having CBT. That's cognitive behavioural therapy. And I was having it specifically for hoarding disorder. And although I had had mental health support prior to that, I'd never had anything specific to hoarding because I'd never admitted to hoarding. But this time last year, I was in the process of 20 weeks of CBT. And you may remember round about this time last year, I had a complete crisis because it came time for my annual gas safety check, where a gas man comes and checks your house isn't going to explode. And I was so stressed about it. And I think I talked about it for 3 episodes in a row because I was so scared, so scared of this man coming in and seeing how things are at home. It was an absolute nightmare. And then, because annual gas safety checks are annual, and that was a year ago, I got my letter a couple of weeks ago saying, make an appointment for your annual gas safety check. And I absolutely panicked. My blood ran cold. I absolutely rang and made it for the latest date possible to give me time to prepare. But it didn't floor me completely like it did last year. I didn't spend 3 weeks hiding from the world to avoid thinking about it. I didn't cancel and rebook like I did last year. I made the appointment and I prepared. And it was notable how different it was. It was still very, very frightening. It was still very, very embarrassing to have to let this man in. But I'll do it in order. So I made a plan for the week running up to the date the gas man was booked, that I would do different stages of work over that week. Now, not unexpectedly, I did ignore that for several days, so I was left in the run-up, maybe 2 or 3 days before it was due, that I had to squeeze a lot in, and I got rid of a lot of the obvious rubbish that had built up. I was very clear that all I was doing was making sure that the entryway, basically making sure that he could get to the gas boiler and the gas meter. I wasn't trying to clear the whole house. I wasn't trying to do anything other really than make it accessible. And a lot of my rubbish builds up around behind the front door. And I talked in recent episodes about something I'm doing to deal with that better. But there's still a build-up because it's been building up for a while. So a lot of what I was doing was getting that out of behind the front door, out of the hallway, and outside into the big bins. And so I did a lot of that. And then I kind of often feel like that kind of work is almost like archaeology. Like there's layers. And you can come across a bag and go, oh, I remember that. That was when this happened, or that was when I was doing this. But the other problem is, I say as if there's only two, another problem is that the mail comes through the front door. And as I've referenced many times, I often ignore the mail. I pick up the bits that look important and leave the rest just behind the front door. And so that had made it increasingly difficult to open the front door fully. Could only open it part of the way. So I needed also to get rid of all that mail that had come through the letterbox. And so I didn't try and open every item of mail and sort it all out. I didn't do any of that. I got 2 big bags and I just put everything, every unopened bit of mail, every leaflet that had come through the door, I just filled the 2 bags up with it, with a view at some point to sorting it out, but it solved the immediate problem. So that was done, and I was getting a lot of the trash out. And then I've got a problem in the kitchen where basically over a period of time, my cupboards got full. And so what I would do when I got shopping was I would put the stuff in the fridge and freezer that needed to go away. I would put the fresh things away, and then tins and packets and things would just stay in bags. And I couldn't put them away because the cupboards were full. I knew that the cupboards had out of date stuff in, but I didn't have it in me to sort them out. So bags were building up in front of the cupboards. And it was a real vicious circle because what would happen then was that I didn't know what I had and what I didn't have because I couldn't just open a cupboard to glance. And so the next time I'd be at the supermarket, I would think, do I have pasta? And I wouldn't know because it could be in one of 20 different bags. So I would just think, oh, it's not like pasta goes off, I'll just get some anyway. So I was buying things that I already had without really knowing, and then that would just end up in another bag in front of the cupboard, and it was I was trapped, and I couldn't then sort out the cupboard because I couldn't open the cupboard because I had so many bags in front of the cupboard, and I felt really, really, really stuck. I didn't know how to make progress with this specific situation. My cupboard that packets and tins went in was inaccessible, so I couldn't sort out the packets and tins. So the problem kept getting worse. And what I did was I got some big bags, they're called bags for life here. They're kind of longer lasting bags you can buy in a supermarket than just the thin plastic ones. And funnily enough, I have a number of these. And so I sat down and got 6 or 7 empty bags for life. And I started sorting from the bags that had had bits of residual shopping in. I started sorting all the tins into one bag, all the pasta into another bag, all the rice into another bag, that kind of thing. All the packets of crisps into another bag, cereal bars into another bag, that kind of thing. So that like was with like. I did a whole episode on the benefits of putting like with like, and this just reinforced it, frankly. And what happened was exactly what I've found with other aspects of putting like with like, and that is that I started to realise just how much excess of certain things I have. I sorted through so many bags that had 2 or 3 or 7 or 8 items of shopping in, just really systematically, one after the other after the other. I needed double bags for some categories, and by the end of it, I honestly thought I could open my own food bank. I had so much long life food. And it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. But now I know what I've got and I know where it is. So if I want a tin of soup, I go to the gigantic bag of tins. If I want some rice, I go to the bag of rice. Now, I haven't yet tackled the cupboard. I have some kind of mental block there. But I have a system now. And I also now, when I'm in the supermarket, I don't even look at the tins and the packets. I know I've almost certainly got numerous of what I need. So that was an important step because the gas boiler and the gas meter that the gas man would need to check are in the kitchen. So I knew the kitchen wasn't going to be tidy. It had these giant bags of stuff and other bags that I haven't looked at yet and laundry that hasn't been done yet and all of that. I know that I have recently discovered that the rest of the world doesn't keep the washing machine in the kitchen, but in the UK we keep the washing machine in the kitchen. So that's why my laundry's in there. And so I was doing these things systematically. And I also, if I had planned that I was going to do a certain task and I approached it and thought that's too hard, I can't do it, then I was quite flexible with myself. And as long as I was doing something towards the aim of making the gas boiler and meter accessible, then it didn't matter. I forced myself to make it not matter that it wasn't necessarily the item I had planned, trying to break some of that rigidity that Dr. Jan Eppingstall and I talked about in the perfectionism episode. I will link to all of these in the show notes, every episode I mention. Show notes at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. And so, over a few days, I just kept on working. I dug in. It was physically hard work. It was exhausting and it was stressful. But rather than last year, when I just froze, this year I did a little bit of freezing and then I talked myself into action. And so by the day the gas man was due, everything was still a mess. But you could fully open the front door because the post was gone and the bags of rubbish were gone. You could get in and around the kitchen as far as he needed to because I had sorted out the shopping situation. So I just put some music on and tried to relax. And I waited and I waited and I went through every emotion because I was so scared and so humiliated at someone having to come in. And I waited and nobody showed up. Nobody came. And I didn't know whether I was relieved or annoyed because I was relieved because nobody had had to come in, but I was annoyed because I knew I would have to put myself through all of that again. So the next day I rang up and they apologised and rearranged. Anyway, so this all happened again. So I had a bit more time. So I did a bit more sorting, got rid of some of the more visible trash that was in the hallway. And by the time it came to the time he was due, I thought, right, this is as much as I can do. This is as good as it gets. And so I waited and there was a knock at the door and I answered it and my adrenaline was flying high and I said, I'm sorry about the state of it. Go ahead and do what you need to do. And then I turned round to let him in. And I'm going to reference another episode here, and that was the episode about seeing things through fresh eyes. Because, my goodness, at the point he knocked, I was thinking, okay, I've done a decent job. I've done as good as I can do. The moment I turned round and saw what he would see, I was immediately horrified and ashamed. It looked 100 times worse than it had looked 10 seconds earlier. And I was mortified, but there was nothing else I could do by then. So I let him in and he did his thing, and it only didn't take long, about 10-15 minutes. And he signed a form and left. And he didn't say anything about it. And I didn't say anything about it other than apologising before he went in. And it was done. And I think it was awful. And I immediately vowed that by next year's annual gas safety check, it will be perfectly clean and tidy. But I said that last year, so I need to be realistic. But what's interesting is that 12 months ago, I was having CBT, and now it's 12 months from then. And I can see a real difference in how I coped with that visit, and also the progress I'm making on an ongoing basis. And I have to give some of the credit, at least, about that to the CBT I had. Some of it is also this podcast and this project and getting great information from interviewees like Jan and Elizabeth Nelson and Sharon Moraine. But I think it's worth 12 months on from CBT, just acknowledging some of how it's helped me in the long term. Now, for those who haven't listened to my episode about having CBT for hoarding disorder, I went into it very skeptical. I felt like CBT was a bit of a cure-all, and it couldn't possibly be that good, because how could it possibly treat everything that people say it can treat? So I went in skeptical and was pleasantly surprised by how helpful it actually was. I thought it would be very formulaic, but it was actually quite personalised to what I needed to cover. And so I want to look at some of the ways I think it's helped me in the medium term, as well as, at the time I was having it, you have that focus and accountability. And I think it's interesting to note that I haven't had it for a while and I'm still making progress.
Say hello to a new era of mental health care. Cerebral is here to help you achieve your mental wellness goals with professional therapy and medication management support. 100% online. You'll experience the all-new Cerebral Way, an innovative approach to mental wellness designed around you. You'll get a personalized treatment plan from a therapist, prescriber, or both in a safe and judgment-free space. Your Cerebral therapist or prescriber will outline a customized plan with clear milestones along the way, so you can get to feeling your best. With Cerebral, you're not alone in your mental health journey. We're here to empower you to live a fulfilling life. So take that first step towards a brighter future and sign up today at Cerebral.com/podcast and use code ACAST to get 15% off your first month. Offer only valid on monthly plans. Other exclusions may apply. Offer ends July 31st, 2024. See site for details.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
So I think the biggest change I see in myself is that I just approach things a bit differently. I am not as defeatist. I don't just say I can't, or it's too much, or I don't know how. What I do now is if I say I can't, I ask myself why. If I say it's too much, I ask myself what I can do to make it not too much. If I say I don't know how, I say, okay, well, what do you know how to do? Or how can you learn what to do? So, whereas before I would have one of these self-defeating thoughts and give up. Now I have a self-defeating thought and I challenge it. So I will say, right, today I'm going to do okay, so I would have said, now I'm going to tackle the kitchen surfaces. And then I would go in the kitchen and look and see and go, no, I can't. So now I go, okay, why can't you? And my response might be, there's just too much. Or I need to move the things on the surfaces and I've got nowhere to move them to. And when I answer that question, then it starts becoming something I can solve rather than just a blanket, no, I can't. So, okay, I can't clean the surfaces without having somewhere to put these things. So, look, I have, I don't know, a washing up bowl here. Why don't I put those things in the washing up bowl for the time being? And then I can sort through this bit. Or if my, no, I can't, there's just too much is the problem, then I can say, okay, let's just deal with this little bit of the surface. Let's deal with the bit by the microwave and nothing else. And so my approach, which was previously, no, I can't, shut down, is no, I can't, why can't you? And see what the actual problem is. I go further than my immediate thought of no. So related to that is also that I'm less all or nothing. Like, I think last year, anticipating the gas man, I was like, well, I can't fix the house, so there's no point doing any of it. Whereas this year I was more, well, I can't fix the house, but I can do my best to fix the entryway, the hallway, and the kitchen. Or I would think, I can't sort out all this shopping in front of the cupboard because I can't sort out the cupboard. Whereas what I've actually done is come up with a partial solution, which is I've sorted out the stuff in front of the cupboard while not having sorted the cupboard itself out yet. I would have considered that a failure before, whereas now I consider it progress. I'm part of the way there. It doesn't have to be 100% complete before I can appreciate the progress I've made and benefit from progress. If I plan to do a particular task and on the day just don't have the energy, now I'm a lot better at saying, okay, well, I can't do the hour of work I'd planned, but if I can do 10 minutes, that still helps. It still gets me towards the overall goal, even if not as much as I'd planned. Whereas a year ago, I would have said, I plan to do an hour, I don't have the energy, I can't do it today. Another thing I'm able to do now is just think a bit more creatively when I'm faced with a problem, like this thing of trying to sort out the bits of leftover shopping when I couldn't get access to the cupboard. It took me a long time to come up with the solution I've come up with. I've had that problem, that specific problem, for a long time and I've not been able to see a way around it. But I eventually came up with this and it's working, and it may not be pretty and it may not be perfect and it may not be ideal, but it's working and it's part of the problem solved and I'm getting there. So a bit more creativity in my thinking. I don't know how to do this, but you know what? I know how to do that. Let's see how I can make that work instead. Or the perfectionism thing would mean I wouldn't tackle something if I didn't fully know how to do it. Whereas now I'm a lot more likely to think, okay, let's work out how to do it. Find a way. And this relates to what my CBT therapist always talked about doing experiments, and what Dr. Jan Eppingstall talks about in our joint episodes about being curious. I think it's essentially the same thing. And that approach helps me immensely because I am a perfectionist and I do like to do things right and I do worry about doing things wrong. Whereas if I frame it as an experiment, if I frame it as, let's see what happens if I do this, or let's be curious about what will happen if I do this, then it doesn't feel like a success versus failure situation. It doesn't feel like I'm either going to win or I'm going to lose. It feels like, let's see, with no judgment either way. Experiments sometimes work and they sometimes don't. That's the nature of an experiment. And if I can tackle my house in that way, then I don't go into it with these great expectations of perfection. Instead, I go into it with, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And some of them work and some of them don't. But when it's framed in that way, for me, it feels a lot less like I have a lot riding on it, too much riding on it to cope. And so I'm finding better ways by experimenting, by being curious. Okay, normally I tackle this kind of problem in this way. Let's just see what happens if I do it this way. And sometimes it's better and then I have a better technique. It's great. It's great. It's like the way we learn to do anything. We are always learning in every area of our life. And if we try and de-hoard our home for the first time and expect perfection from the start and expect to fully know how to do it and expect to fully understand how it will all work right from the start before we've even tried, it's no wonder we don't get anywhere with that approach. So this idea of experimenting, this idea of being curious about what will happen, along with this thing of questioning myself rather than shutting down, those two things have made it a bit unrecognisable the way I approach things now. And that sounds dramatic, and it kind of is, and it's not necessarily reflected in how things look as I look around me. There's so much work still to do, I can't tell you, but I feel more equipped. I feel less like I'm flailing. I feel more like I'm getting a bit of a plan in place, a bit of a strategy, and a bit more of a map. So I can look at the map and see where I need to be, and I have more of an idea of how to get there. And so therapy isn't perfect. You don't go into therapy flawed and come out perfect. This is an ongoing process, and it's really hard. But I thought it was interesting to do a kind of 12-month review, given how much I talked about the gas man last year, and it just felt like such a different experience this year. Still hard, still panicky, still incredibly embarrassing. But the way my head handled it was different, and I put at least some of it down to the CBT, and I put at least some of it down to the focus that this podcast continues to give me. In just 1 second, I'll give you my top tip of the week. In the meantime, please do subscribe to the podcast, review it, 5 stars would be amazing, and share it with your friends or anyone who might be interested or who might benefit from it. It all really helps. To find more ways to support the website, the podcast, and my overall de-hoarding project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support. Now, back to your top tip. So my top tip this week comes from a podcast called The Daily Pep. I will link to it in the show notes, of course. The Daily Pep is a very short daily podcast that is really encouraging and lovely, and I strongly recommend you subscribe to it. It's by a woman called Meg Kissack, and I wanted to share some of her episode on progress, and I found it encouraging, and I also like that she backed up a lot of what I say about progress all being progress. So have a listen to Meg.
We have this idea that we have to move in these really perfect straight lines, that in order to start something, we have to have a really good plan, and that you have to get to wherever you want to go as fast and as efficiently as possible. But here's the thing, and I know this, and I definitely know that you know this. Life often doesn't work like that. Progress can sometimes be really slow. Progress often doesn't feel like progress, the same way as courage often doesn't feel like courage. And sometimes we just take a different route altogether, be it through circumstance, be it through our own choice, or be it that life just works out that way. But any progress is still progress. You might be frustrated that you're not moving as far as you'd like to, as quick as you'd like to, but as long as you're still moving and you're putting one foot in front of the other, that is absolutely what counts. Let's say you're aiming for something and a certain action is going to get you half the way there. No, it might not be your ideal scenario. It might not be exactly what you were aiming for, but halfway there is still a fucking big deal. And taking action usually begets action. So here's to knowing that progress doesn't have to look the way that we think it should look. Often we won't recognise signs of progress because we're so used to seeing monumental things as the only signs that we're moving forward. And here's to knowing that any action counts.
So I hope that was as encouraging to you as it was to me. Thank you for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding podcast. You can find more online at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. You can find me on Twitter at @thathoarder and on Facebook at Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder. To find out more about how you can support this podcast and the overall project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support and do subscribe to this podcast so you make sure you don't miss any future episodes.